Okay. Good evening, Facebook. Good evening. How are you? I am really pleased you have joined us. And I'm just so excited about this evening. You know, I have been excited about every forum that we've had in 2021. Sharon Seifel did a phenomenal job. Everyone has been great. And I have told you each time how great the speaker was. And you know what? And it's been true every single time. If you go back and you listen, everybody that I said was great and had something to offer, if you go back and listen to the tapes, videos, you will see that I told the truth. And I am saying this evening, you're in for a treat. Those of you who know about neuroscience, you just stay and see if she's telling you the truth. Those of us who don't know about it, we are going to learn about it this evening. And before we get started, I just want to make sure, as always, that everyone knows how the Children of Promise forums under the Sacramento Valley section of the National Council of Negro Women are financed. Our underwriters are Pharma, Odette Y. Crawford, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority, Eta Gamma Omega Chapter, Ollie W. Watson, Maggie C. Temple, Leon and Della Johnson, and Dr. Hazel W. Mahone. These are the people who give over and above to make sure that there are funds for whatever the incidental needs are of the Children of Promise virtual follow-up forums. There were others. If you look on our page, you will see all of the people who gave to the Children of Promise conference. But these people wanted to make sure that you would be able to see and enjoy the Children of Promise Forum. Um, you are in for a treat this evening. You are in for a real treat. And our person, you know, Sharon Sappho, it's this time that I usually introduce Sharon Sappho. And for whatever reason, Sharon is having trouble getting on today. So, Cheri, if you will forgive me for blotching up your introduction because I don't have it handy because Sharon takes care of this for me. But I'm going to just say from what I know, we have a young woman from Points of Access. She is the executive director, and she has done research in neuroscience. And that's what I'm excited about. Sharon, you will forgive me, okay? Of not telling and you can tell all of the other things that you do because you do a lot of things and you bring a lot to the Children of Promise follow-up forum. And I present to you Cheri Reaves from Points of Access.
Hello, hello. I'm so excited. Thank you so much. It is my greatest pleasure to be here this morning with all of you, or this evening with all of you. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. I am Cheri Reaves with Points of Access, and we do tremendous work that is culturally responsive, trauma sensitive, developmentally appropriate practice, and that is a mouthful. But that really means that our work is undergirded by neuroscience and relational health. So, you know, I'm so excited about neuroscience, and I really want to be able to share some things with our families, with all of us. You know, how can we think about this in thinking about the power of neuroscience in cultivating and sustaining joy moments for relational health? Okay, so that we can be the best that we can be and our babies can be the best that they can be. And so what I'm really excited about is that what does neuroscience tell us about joy, building on the assets that we have? Two things that doesn't cost us a dime: love, love, and joy. And how can we take full advantage of those assets and strengthen our minds and our bodies and give our children what they need to fulfill their highest potential? Now that's exciting. That is exciting. I have children of my own, and I cannot tell you how excited I was when I learned about all these different things that are helpful for us to know how do we nurture our minds and our spirits. So I am going to kind of, you know, tap on my little PowerPoint here and just kind of make certain that you have the chance to see other beautiful faces of people of color on this PowerPoint, but also so that we can kind of hang our hat a little bit on some of these ways of thinking and knowing about the topic. Okay, so one of the things that I think my PowerPoint's advancing. I see that she turned it on. Okay, all right. Okay, so one of the things that I want to say is that, I want to ask each one of you. Okay, it's the evening, and the first thing before I get into the scientific neuroscience topic about how our brains and our hearts and our bodies work in order to build our capacities for long-term health and for wellness and our ability to learn and think and grow, what does your joy moment look like? I mean, what is it that you've taken the time? Is it something that you think about? Do you think about taking a joy moment, taking a moment to actually think about your happiness and your wellness? Love and joy are really some of the most powerful nutrients for your brain and your body. Love, I'm going to say that again. Love and joy are two of the most powerful nutrient packed, or at least activates important nutrients in your brain and body. So, what does before we get into neuroscience here, have you ever thought about this? What does your blessing dance look like? What does your intentional blessing dance look like? What does your blessing song look like when you think about things that get you excited about living and learning and loving? And what does your blessing walk look like? Because these are the things that our children pass on to one another and to us. Okay, so one of the things that we're going to talk about is how do we align our hearts and our minds for sustainability of our wellness. One of the things that's really important, and this was really important during COVID, is that how we experience joy and what nutrients we activate in our brain impacts our blood pressure. It can impact our heart rate. It can impact our physiological well-being. The way that we engage one another is really important because what we usually say is that emotions are contagions. And that's get excited and someone's really excited to engage with you. If they're really excited, you get excited. If they're laughing, you laugh. You may not even know what the joke is about. But just the fact that they're exuberant and they're laughing activates the mirror neurons in your brain that causes you to reflect back the same type of behavior. So what that means is that we are beginning to engage in conversations with our children, with our babies, with one another, even before we open our mouths. Even before we say that first word to whomever we're engaging with, we've already begun to activate one another's mirror neurons and then begin to reflect back to each other the behaviors of what we're seeing. So, you mamas and papas out there, is that what is your nonverbal conversation to your babies? When you walk into a room and you see your babies, you walk into a room, before you open your mouth, what is your body telling them? Is it welcoming? Does it say you are amazing, you are brilliant, you are all that? Because they can begin to internalize that model that we're creating, or that way of how we see them and how we engage with them without us saying anything. So that's really important. So what is our brain telling our children's brains before our words come out? That's what's really important. So you're going to see in these slides, I have little brains in there to kind of remind us that we are engaging not just with our beautiful faces of our children, of our babies, beautiful faces of one another, we are engaging with one another's brains. And so, therefore, which is really important, we can impact one another on a neurobiological basis. Because if I'm really, really stressed and I have a, and my body comes in and I'm really high energy, then my babies are going to pick up that high energy stress. My teenagers are going to pick up that stress. And it's going to show in how they react to stress themselves. And enough of my angst can be passed on to them of how they learn to navigate the world. So that's really important, is that how do I stay calm and regulated? That means I take my 10 deep breath and just calm my body and my mind, and then greet my baby. Before I engage with my children, I need to engage with myself. I need to center myself, tell myself I'm all that. Tell yourself you're all that. Tell myself that I am good, that I am calm, that I am loving, that I am peaceful, that I am patient. I have that conversation with myself before I have a conversation with my babies, before I have a nonverbal conversation with my babies, so that my mirror neurons give them the right message, and that my brain, nonverbal conversation, my brain that's going to activate my mirror neurons and therefore activate theirs, and then they'll kind of copy or mirror what I'm doing, will give them the right blessing song and the right blessing dance and the right blessing walk that says they are worthy, that says they are capable. And because if we stay in our, the part of the bottom part of the brain, or the amygdala, which is that fear center, that fight or flight type of part of our brain that says, there is a lion outside. It's not a stuffed lion. No one won this lion from the fair. It is a lion, and I'm not going to think about it logically. I'm not going to analyze it. I am getting out of here as fast as I can. That fight or flight is automatic. It's automatic. And so we want to make certain that we're only using the fight or flight response in our brains when we need to outrun that bear, when we need to outrun that lion or that tiger or whatever it is we need to outrun. We want to make certain that we engage that part of our brain under those circumstances. We don't want to activate that part of our brain when it's not necessary. Because activating the stress response system on a continuous basis is almost like turning on your engine in your car and putting your gas pedal and revving it as hard as you can. If you did that every single day, pretty soon you need to buy a new car. You need to buy a new engine. It overwhelms the system. And so, since the brain is neuroplastic, which means it reshapes itself, pretty amazing. It can reshape itself through experiences. And that's why we can learn. It's like, okay, I'm going to learn 5 languages. I'm going to learn math. I'm going to learn science. I'm going to learn all these different things. I have the capacity to do that because my brain can shape itself and strengthen those particular areas of the brain that I need to learn those different topics, those different subjects. If we are using, there's a saying that, use it or lose it. If we use a part of the brain consistently, it strengthens that neural pathway for the brain. If I'm always speaking, Swahili, then the neural pathways that are underlying for the important conversation that I need to have in Swahili will get even stronger. So I'll be able to think about how to speak in Swahili faster, or how to speak in French, or whatever it is that I need to speak, how to speak in Creole. If I am activating and using my stress part of my brain most often, because I'm always in a stressful, antagonistic, or uncomfortable situation, then that part of the brain gets strengthened. And so what we want to do, because love supports the neuroplasticity of the brain. It supports the capacity of us to reshape our brain in ways that help us to be the strongest and the most capable learners that we can be, and also that we can be our best selves. So love and joy, think about taking it like a a medicine, dosing yourself literally with joy. Here at Points of Access, we talk about the fact that we don't take breaks during the day. We don't take lunch hours. And it doesn't mean we work 24/7. It means that we take joy moments instead. We want to be intentional about how we are giving ourselves a serving, a dose of joy, so that we are taking care of our brains and our bodies with intentionality. And we take an extended joy moment at lunchtime to have something to eat and take care of ourselves, but that we want to dose our brains and our bodies with joy. And joy, I mean, I might enjoy watching a butterfly land on a flower or whatever it is that I might enjoy, but to be intentional about it, to say, this moment, I'm just going to think about something that makes me happy, and I'm going to enjoy the process and the journey of that, and enjoy all of the different things that happen in my brain and body when I feel joyful. So one of the things we want to think about is that, where do we hang our hat as far as what our assets and our strengths are concerned? What does it mean to be brilliant and beautiful and strong? And I just love this little picture of this little guy with his brilliant, beautiful baby shirt. He is brilliant and beautiful, and so are all of our babies. And that means babies, those of you who are watching, if you're, a teenager, you are babies also. You are our babies. So love supports relational health. It supports our ability to take care of ourselves social and emotionally, keep that stress response system down so we can have full access to the thinking part of our brain. We want to calm that stress response system so it's not overactivated. So it gives a chance for the rest of our brain to do what it needs to do the thinking and the organizing and the creativity and all those things that happen in the top part of our brain, whereas the fear center is in the bottom part of our brain. It's like way down in the back there. We want just that part to stay calm, so that the neuroplasticity and the neural pathways for our thinking and organizing and creating, for our math and science and language and all those different things, for us to be able to, build a car or build a building or invent the next cure to an illness. We want to be able to have full access to the thinking part of our brain. So we want to think about the fact that to be intentional with our love, to be intentional with our joy, and dose ourselves with joy, dose our children with joy daily, like medicine, because it is medicine for your mind, it's medicine for your brain, it's medicine for your heart, and to be intentional about it. So one of the things that we want to think about is also culture. We're all cultural beings. We want to, and we need to recognize how we honor culture, how we do that, so that our children have a sense of who they are, that they know that they come from amazing kingdoms, that they come from amazing brilliance, that it's really something that they need to understand, because how they see themselves, how they think about themselves, also impacts what part of the brain is activated. One of the things that's really important also is our communication. We have amazing communication skills. We storytelling, which is incredibly foundational to our literacy skills and strengthening those neural pathways for language, our linguistic assets, okay? The way we talk, the way we really move our mouths and think about who we are and where we are in the world, and how we build on what we know, and share that with our children. And one of the things I just want to say that's really important is that, we talk, and what we need to do is be intentional also about when we're talking to our babies, because what we want to do is build on their neural pathways to their brain, to their thinking, because those things that fire together in their brains wire together. So that means it strengthens that neural pathway. And we want to make certain that language is strengthened, of course, in their brain. So it's so important for children to look at us face to face, look at us in our faces, and then talk to us and we talk to them so they can see our mouth move, so they can see our eyes and our expression, so they can read our faces, so that all those different parts of the brain that are, activated during a conversation, when you're looking at my mouth, my nose, my glasses, my my eyes, my in the thinking that goes along with that experience is really important. So we want to make sure that we're taking time daily to talk face to face with our children. Now we know we can get really busy and we may, holler across the room and say, Joey, can you bring me this or can you okay, that's navigating the world naturally. However, it is important to be intentional about how we talk to our children. So we do want to literally spend some time sitting down and talking to them face to face. Other thing is tell them who they are, history, because in our brains, from the beginning, we create an internal working model or way we see ourselves. And the activation of that internal working model, how we see ourselves, really is important in healthy brain development, because we want the parts of the brain activated that say, I know how to do math, yes. And I know how to do science, yes. And I know how to write, and I know how to tell stories, and in all these different things. We want them to see themselves as capable so that they intentionally use those parts of the brain to strengthen those neural pathways. And so conversations with our babies about who they are and whose they are is so important, that they're excellent. They come from excellence, and that's important. So one of the things, I talk about power, that cultivating and sustaining relational health using power and the power of love. Remember, the power of love comes from something greater than ourselves. We call it divine love. Okay. And so children need to know that they're in a relationship with us, that they are protected and they're nurtured and they're supported and they are loved. That they need to hear that also. I love you, baby. Yes, I mean you. And by the way, all of you are worthy of love. And I just want, if no one ever told you that, I'm telling you today, you are worthy. The other thing that I want to talk about is that, we need to cultivate our children's internalized image of brilliance. I said that earlier, but one of the things that's important is that emotions are contagions. Okay. And we think about that word, it's almost like, oh, you mean like, like something you don't want to catch? Well, you want to catch it if it's love. You want to catch it if it's joy. You want it to be a contagion if it's a positive emotion, because positive emotions strengthen those parts of the brain that allow us to stay centered and strengthen and activate the parts of the brain that help us to grow and think and build capacities of ourselves and others. So however, you want to think about this, there is that other side, that if emotions are contagions, then our anger and our stress and our attitudes that could have a lot of negative energy are contagious as well, and will manifest in the way that children move through the world and the way that they're able to use their brains and bodies successfully. It doesn't mean that we can never get angry. It's, for children to see that we're angry, the anger needs to be tempered and not directed at harm. It needs to show children, when I'm angry, I take 10 deep breaths. That's the fastest way to calm your stress response system, by the way, to take slow, when someone cut you off in traffic, instead of letting that anger sit in your body, take slow, deep breaths, because they're going to keep on going their way. And you're going to take that home to your family and also hold it in yourself. Whatever makes you angry, you need to acknowledge that and then take your deep breaths and calm yourself and know that it's not worth impacting your wellness. And it's certainly not worth impacting our baby's wellness, right? So we want to get excited about brilliance. We want to get excited about creating internal working models for our children of brilliance and holding that with them. In other words, internal ways in our brains, how we see ourselves, because they will walk tall. They will do things they didn't know they could do when you tell them that. And I will tell you this from experience. I'm not just making this up. I have three children, okay, 2 sons and a daughter. And I told my children, I told my babies, you are brilliant. You already can read. Okay, now they were 6 months old, so sitting on my lap, they weren't reading. Okay. But I told them they could because my grandmother would carry me on her hip where I can see her face, and the rhythm of her movement carrying me on her hip kept my stress response system so calm and soothed. And the soothing rhythm of her voice had me just hanging on to every word that she said. And she'd say, oh, baby girl, you are so brilliant. My mom told me that too, but it's something, when someone in multi-generational tell you that, you're just like, oh, well then that's why my mom is brilliant. Because if you telling me I'm brilliant, and she would carry me around so I could feel the rhythm of her walk on the hip. We put our babies on our hips, or put your babies on your back, so they can feel the rhythm of our bodies moving in love and in grace and in respect for the wholeness of us, right? Walking through the world like our children are connected to brilliance, right? To kingdoms, to kings and queens. And that's not just something we say, it's the truth. So when she did that, I learned to read really early because I didn't know that I couldn't read. No one told me that. No one told me I couldn't read. So I just read. And I went to kindergarten, went to preschool, and I was reading. As a matter of fact, little side note here, I didn't know that. My teacher was the first one who told me that I wasn't supposed to read. She told me, no, you don't learn to read until 3rd grade. And so then I kept a secret for the longest time in class. I didn't want anyone to know that I could read because here I was in, we were in 1st grade, and then now they're teaching you to read at kindergarten, but I had been reading since I was 3 years old. So I thought, oh, I better keep it a secret. But then one day, my friend got hurt on campus. We had to write a little note and send it to him, after she went home. And so I just started writing and writing and writing, turn over the page and write some more, write some more. Now, you have to be able to read to write, right? There weren't scribbles. So I gave myself away. I had to stay after school and tell her that I could read. And she had another teacher come and say, do you know this child can read? And I read. She had me read it. But at that time, here's the thing. At that time, they said, well, what do you do with a Black child who can read? Nothing. Well, that's not true. Okay. So your babies, we don't allow that to happen. My mama didn't allow that to happen. And I kept on reading. Once the secret was out, though, I felt free. I read everything. Okay. I didn't care. And so one of the things that you want to know is don't tell your children what they can't do. Tell their children what they can do. Tell your babies what they can do, because you're talking directly to their brain. That's what I want you to think about. We are talking directly to our babies' brains and to their hearts. So I want us to think about this when we're thinking about our babies' brains. How are we dosing and nurturing each neural pathway of that brain with love? How are we creating safe, loving spaces for them to grow? When you have to write your list and you stick it on the refrigerator on your grocery list, at the top of your list, put on something that's going to feed your baby's brain and body, mind, and spirit. So put love on the top of your list. That means, did I tell my baby, I love you, baby girl. I love you, baby boy. I love you. And, did I intentionally tell them looking at their faces like my grandmother would do? And that's important because that is wonderful food for the brain. Love is a protective factor. We call it a protective factor. It is something that helps to nurture you, to help ward off depression, to help ward off extraordinary stress that can impact us on a cellular level, right, can impact us and make us ill. We have too much stress in our body. Love is that nurturance. Joy is that nurturance. So we want to make certain that we're dosing that to ourselves, self-love, and we're dosing that to each other. The other thing I want to think about is that these, brains need to be fed great intention, that we need to give healthy things to our brain. And so feeding your heart and brain so they can work in synchrony together is really important. So we need to nurture that joy. And I want to share with you, I hope you can see it on here, that there are free seeds. In other words, you don't have to say, well, it's not quite in my budget, because, it gets expensive out there. But you can take up one pot, okay? I remember my first garden was in an old gumbo pot that my mama gave me. She said, go plant you a garden, baby girl. And I did. I planted me some collard greens and some green beans and, some tomatoes in that pot. So you don't need to have a huge space. You can grow your garden on your patio. You can grow it on your front porch. You can grow it, as long as you have some soil, some dirt, some soil, and some seeds, and you can get some free seeds from, um, it's listed on here. There are places that are in our government that will actually give you free seeds. There are places, a lot of organizations will give you free seeds. And so you actually can afford to grow your own collard greens, grow your own tomatoes, grow your cucumbers, grow, staples. You can make a whole meal, that, with green beans that have wonderful nutrients in it, and collard greens and cucumbers and tomatoes. Collard greens to feed your brain and your body. Vitamin A, C, K, calcium, potassium, folate, all kind of antioxidants, which is what your brain needs to stay healthy. Needs something that's going to fight off anything that's going to come into your body and begin to uh, impact how your brain activates itself, how it reshapes itself. We want our brains to lean into supporting the neuroplasticity of our brain and not have our brains reshaping by default. So we want to be intentional. Green beans, vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin K, folate, niacin, calcium, iron. Okay, so I want you to think about that we need to feed our brains and bodies, that our our brains need nutrients. Our brains need love, our brains need joy, and our brains need those biological nutrients. We need to be really intentional about how we protect our, what I call our love energy. Okay, we need to protect it like it's gold, because it is. And it was passed on intergenerationally. And so that's what we need to think about. Because can you imagine? You had to love you some babies. Yeah, we had to love some babies to stay alive, to intentionally stay alive through the Middle Passage, stay alive through all across all time. Because one of the things that's important is culturally, go back to that first slide, culturally, we wanted to think about the fact that we are I see my slides moving around here, that culturally we want to think about the fact that our language, linguistic wealth that I talked about, kind of tells our story. All right, the fact that we use the verb to be specifically, um, can be intentionally nurturing to our brain and body. And let me just clarify that. My grandfather told me that to be, when we say, I'll be going to the store, because, we always, to be is an important word. It means to be connected to the past, the present, and the future. And when you know yourself, your brain is really, really nurtured. When you can stand in confidence of who you are, then you're activating the parts of the brain that allows you to support your executive function, the part that organizes things, the parts that do the planning, the parts that help you to move through the world successfully, when you can sit there and know who you are. So embrace those assets and protect our energy. That's what's really important. Protect your love energy. Pour it into yourself first, so you can have something that's been cultivated in you that you can pour into your babies. And as my grandmother would say, and my mother, and everybody before them, that it's important to speak blessings into your life. There are certain parts of the brain that are activated when you speak positive things, when you are experiencing joy, when you're experiencing healthy, safe love, when you are thinking about someone that is wonderful and loving to you, important parts of your brain are activated. And those parts of your brain need to be activated, whether they're at school or not, whether they're home, whether your babies are home or not. Intentionally activate what I call the joy centers of your brain on a regular basis with a grateful heart. So your brain does need these loving messages, just like our lungs need oxygen. Your brains, our brains, and our babies' brains need loving care. Our babies need positive relationships to develop and stay healthy. Our brains need positive, healthy relationships because our engagement is reciprocal. So I impact whoever I'm engaged with. We're interconnected, and whoever I'm engaging with can impact me. So as I engage with my babies, as I engage with my children, I can be positive. I can be nurturing. I can be supportive. It doesn't mean that I don't have boundaries, because boundaries are important, and boundaries help children feel safe, to know that there are some rules that exist to keep them safe, that help them to learn. But safe, respectful, kind ways of moving through the world. I'm going to circle back because I told my children, I told you about me learning to read really quickly early at 3. My children learned to read really quickly, not because I was a masterful teacher, but because they didn't know they couldn't. And so the storytelling, they hear it. Storytelling strengthens the language centers of the brain. The rhythm, even positive rap messages strengthen and can calm the stress response system if it's a calming, regular rhythm, and the and strengthen the language centers because they're using language. So it's really important to know that the skills that our babies already have to be excellent readers, to be excellent STEAM folks. Um, Here's a little reminder: daily give your brain some love. Love on yourself. Love on your babies. And do it with great intentionality because your brain needs it. What's really important is that there's a love on your brain, right? So there's a gut brain axis that we need to consider, and how my brain feels can impact my stomach, and my stress in my stomach can impact my brain. So that's really important. That circular axis can really shape how our brains engage and how they work. So, so the other thing that I want to talk about is that really how important it is to sit down and have a daily meal together. Okay, that's important. That is something that we don't talk about for neuroscience, but it is so important because what does it do when we sit down together? It causes us to look at each other face to face, typically, which means that we are activating the parts of the brain that is important for us to engage in that face to face conversation. It calms our stress response system. We can create enormous feelings of safety and love and security by having a meal together, because a meal says, I'm being nurtured, I am being fed. And remember what I told you about creating a garden in a pot. Okay, so we can feed ourselves, we can take care of ourselves, we can make certain that, because we can get free seeds. So we can have a meal, and that meal does not need to be, a huge meal that takes you've been cooking for 3 weeks. You can sit down and have an apple together. Sit down and have a bowl of oatmeal together. Sit down and have some grits together. Sit down and have a meal where we're looking face to face with intentionality, great, thinking about I am dosing my baby, whether my baby's 2 years old or my baby's 17, I am intentionally dosing my baby with love, because love is the most powerful healing grace that we have. Okay. And it's incredible that what we can do for ourselves and for one another, if when we understand that, because it does not cost us anything. So that's really important, to make certain that it's love is the main course in our meal, regardless of what we're sitting down to eat. The other thing is that when I think about this, is that we talked about intentionality. We want to make certain that we're intentionally creating love. Are we intentionally creating love, or inadvertently creating fear? How we engage with someone. So when I think about the manifestation of love in our bodies, calm, allows for us to access the executive function of our brain and the other thinking parts of our brain, the language centers, and all these other parts of our brain and body that we need to be strengthened for us to be healthy and whole. Or fear that keeps us in the bottom part of our brain, and the top part of our brain does not get exercise. And what we know about the brain is that whenever you don't use it, it starts to weaken, and then it gets pruned away. I mean, it says what you if you don't use it, you lose it. So we want to be intentional about using the parts of our brain and body that allow us to be our best selves. And that one of the things that I would like you to think about is what I call 15 soul kisses daily. Think about how many did I give myself 15 soul kisses? Did I give myself 15 positive things? And did I give my babies 15 positive soul kisses? Those are dream builders. Okay? Sending out strong positive messages for at least 15 seconds. Did I engage my baby for at least 15 seconds saying something positive that allows that part of the brain to be strengthened and activated so they can be their best selves? Honoring our child's gifts. And it's really important to make certain that, that we are honoring the gifts that they're cultivated in themselves. What are their interests? What do they want? What is their purpose? What is their assignment? What is it that they're doing that we can support and nurture? Learning and teaching are reciprocal. In other words, if I'm teaching, whoever I'm engaging with is also teaching me something. And so our children are teaching us something. And so we want to think about and pause every now and then and go, what is my baby teaching me? What part of my brain is being activated by engaging with them, by engaging with my babies? Steam is in your bones. Okay, I just want to give you all a little bit information on that. I said that before. Steam, science, technology, engineering, art, mathematics, it's in your bones. Okay, can you imagine how many years these brains, because we're talking about neuroscience now, but from what I can tell from my research, there's a lot of folks who may not have used that word neuroscience of how they cultivate and strengthen their brains and their minds, but all that singing and rhythm that they were doing was calming those stress response systems during the hardest times of history. All that dancing and clapping they were doing and sending the vibrations into their bodies was calming those stress response systems, creating resilience. The artistic way of being in the world, the way of creating something out of nothing, and that idea of that there are no limitations. You see here that Garrett Morgan created the traffic light in 1923, and Otis Morgan control for the pacemaker. How important that is, and it's certainly changed over the years. I want you to think about this. Alice Bell developed a treatment for leprosy back in 1915, and we can go even back to the 1800s of incredible inventors. And that's important to know. Our children need to know that they come from brilliance. Partnering in mutual love and respect is really important, knowing that we are activating one another's mirror neurons. So take a moment to write down your top 3 family goals so that you can be intentional about how you cultivate that. Is love one of the top goals? Is dosing your children with joy? Is health one of the top goals? Because those 3 foundational things nurture our brains and our bodies so that we're able to do the other things, to get that job, to go on to school, to get that college degree, to do whatever it is that our children want to be their best selves. So to ask ourselves daily, ask our brains, talk to our own brains, are we living what we desire in this very moment with a grateful heart? Have I activated joy by doing that? Whatever it is, whatever it is. Joy doesn't cost a dime, but oh my goodness, is it a wealth. And love doesn't cost a dime either, but it is enormous wealth. I didn't know when I was growing up that we didn't have a lot of money. I felt like a queen. I was, well, because my mama was a queen, but I mean, I felt like a princess. I felt powerful and strong because that's what my mother and grandmother always told me. I didn't know, when I brought my collard greens and everybody else was eating a peanut butter jelly sandwich, and I brought my collard greens in the lunch and my cornbread, I didn't know it was because that's what we had. I thought, oh, look at my feast here. I get to bring this. I was so connected to how wonderful it was to be in the garden and to cultivate our own food. I didn't know there was a difference. So I never had that mindset that we didn't have enough. I always thought we had more than enough. We were wealthy, right? We were rich with love and rich with joy and rich with possibilities. Love is a protective factor. Love is strengthening. Love is healing. Love is nurturing. And it's what you have right now. Is what you have right now. You don't have to go look in your cupboard. You don't have to go to the store to get this. You don't have to try to find it. You already have it. And it was passed down to you generationally, which is the most powerful gift we can give the world, right? As fellow human beings, but as parents, it's the most powerful gift we can give our babies, that is healing to their brains and healing to their bodies, and creates an image of self that is sustaining them across anything. Or to think about your childhood memories and think about, I have, like I said, really good memories of bringing collard greens and black eyed peas, thinking I was very wealthy to school. And think about how powerful that is. How, where did someone make you think that you are not enough? And rewrite that story in your brain so that you tell your children's brain that they are more than enough, that they're worthy, they're magnificent, that they're brilliant. The other thing is that clothe yourself in worthiness. I just want to tell you, just in case you don't know, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights has said that you're more than enough. When you were born, everything that was the most powerful, divine love said you were more than enough. But just so you know, there are also legal international documents that say that you are more than enough and that you are worthy. So protect your joy. Joy connects us to the divine, and joy is cultivated from a grateful heart. Who is in your inner circle? And do they help you to cultivate joy? Do you surround your children with joy, with the people who come into your space and into your home and in the school? Pack your joy like you pack a lunch and bring it with you to school when you go with your babies. Re-envision and restart. We have a chance to have a new beginning, to embrace our own powerful creative rhythm, to create a space for your children to base their own rhythm, to step into their own purpose. The brain and heart benefit greatly from rhythm. And oh my goodness, across history, across time, don't we have a lot of rhythm? So we have tremendous strengths for our brain and body. The brain needs rhythm to stay centered and calm. And don't we have rhythm? These are to remind you about those 15 soul kisses, okay, on your brain and on your baby's brains. Stand in grace. Walk in your power, because you are worthy and you are loved, because you are STEAM, okay, from way back. And you and your babies can do anything. Anything. We have all that we need. Tremendous assets. So I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to have this conversation with you. I am so excited about the possibilities for our babies, because we love on them the way we've always loved on them, but this time with great intentionality, knowing that we're talking to their brains and we're talking to their hearts, and we're giving them what they need and reminding them who they are, so that we can partner with their mirror neurons and their neuroplasticity of their brain and lean into this neuroscience for relational health and the well-being of our babies. So I thank you so much, and I'm glad I had a chance to share this time with you.
Thank you so much, so very much. This was, this is um, just exciting. I learned a lot, and I just wanted to ask some questions. How do we become intentional? What do you mean? You kept using the word intentional. How do we become
Yeah,
intentional?
that is an excellent question. I say intentional because we need to do it on purpose. And the way we become intentional is that's why I said, to act as though we're engaging with one another's brains. Because if we know that our engagement and our interaction actually shapes our children's brains, then we're going to be intentional about what we feed into their brains. We're going to be intentional about how we love them, what words we give to them. We're going to do it on purpose.
Okay. The one thing that you I read the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, and he said, that the child was born with no ears, and they told the child from the day that it was born that it was going to grow up and be rich and famous. So they spoke that into him, and I have not connected it with neurosurgery
Yes.
science or
Yes.
anything or feeding the brain. But the
Yes.
new concept is that was feeding the brain of that children. And when, the teacher told you you couldn't read, you never knew you couldn't
I
read.
never knew I couldn't read. I read from the time they gave me a book. I didn't know I couldn't read. And so I read.
Yes.
And my younger son, no one told, he saw his older siblings reading. They started reading at 3 and 4, and so he was younger. He was 2 years old. He didn't know he couldn't read, so he read. So because the brain's neuroplasticity allows us to shape it. And when we know that, we can do it with great intentionality on purpose, right? We can
Yes.
do it on purpose. We can tell children what they need to know about their truth. No limitations. What they need to know about their truth. Because when they know they can't do it, when they can't do it. When they know that they can do it, they do it. Because the brain will begin to activate that part of the brain that needs to be activated during literacy, right? And the storytelling and all the rich, wonderful engagement that we do on a regular basis is fuel. It is feeding us. And we are born scientists. Okay, we're born STEAM. Children are so curious. You know that. You've seen babies. They want to put everything in their mouth. They're just running around trying to figure out everything. They're born brilliant. They're born scientists. And so all we need to do is continue to cultivate that, because that strengthens then the neural pathways in the brain that enable them to step into that fully.
I missed the 15.
Soul kisses.
Yes.
Yes, you see that, in the back here. That's one of the things that, points of access does. We are, as I said, culturally, linguistically responsive, trauma sensitive, developmentally appropriate practice. In other words, we build capacities of, organizations, of schools, of, children and families, to understand how do we leverage neuroscience in a way that is, we don't have to be a neuroscientist. How do we leverage it and take advantage of reshaping our relational health in a way that we all land on our feet? You saw, maybe we talk about cats landing on our feet, and we spoke cats with two T's. Cats landing on their feet, so do we. It's really important to know that those soul kisses, okay, to be intentional, to do it on purpose, to wake up every morning and go, you know what, I need to give myself 15 soul kisses and mark them down. Okay, I gave myself 5. I need to give myself 5 more. Okay, 3 more soul kisses. Okay, and to do it for our babies, because that activates and nurtures different neural pathways in our brains that help us to have strong brains that can be resilient against depression, against anxiety, against all these different things. So yes, that's one of the things, is that 15 soul kisses.
Okay, what are they?
Oh my goodness, 15 soul kisses. It is, what do I need to tell myself that says that I am worthy? Okay. That's what soul kisses are. It reminds you that you are worthy of love, that you are worthy. So it's like, you know what, Cheri, you are amazing. You know what? You are, yeah, I might say, you are so brilliant. You know what? You are so calm. You know what? You are so, who am I if I'm looking at my highest self? Who am I in the eyes of the divine? That's how I need to look at myself. That's why I say soul kisses. Because if we look at ourselves through human eyes, we're like, well, I need to lose 15 pounds, or, I need to do something. I should have, we have all these things that are just not true about ourselves. But when we give ourselves soul kisses and we say, what is my value in the eyes of the divine? What is my divine love, my worthiness? That means that I'm going to give myself 15 soul kisses really easy. I'm going to give this to my children. So when they go out in the world, it clothes them in worthiness. So no one can tell them. Like when my teacher said you can't read, I kept it a secret, but I didn't stop reading. Not at all. I thought, oh, this is interesting. I didn't want to hurt her feelings. So I thought, oh, she wants to teach me to read. That's the reason why I kept it a secret. Not because I was ashamed of it. I wanted her to have her special day when she could teach me.
So, um, you know, I noticed that you talked about in when we as adults, we need to be conscious of our just how we enter, how we walk, or how be
Yeah.
aware of how children will read what they see on
Yes.
our faces and what
Yes.
they hear in our voices,
Yes. Tone
in
and
feeding
everything.
the brain.
Oh my goodness. Before we even open our mouths, we are having a conversation with our babies. Before we even open our mouths, we're having a conversation brain to brain with our babies. And so that means that how we move through the world, because we're activating their mirror neurons, they're copying us. It's not just something that we say, watch what you're doing because they'll copy you. Their brains are actually paying attention out of their own awareness. And so we have to make certain that. That's why we say, give yourself 15 soul kisses daily, and give your babies 15 soul kisses, because it allows you to align with the mindset that says you're worthy, and allows your children to align with the mindset of seeing themselves as capable, as brilliant, as strong, as smart, as, and so that's really important. And some of the things when we do our workshops, we actually do mirrors. We actually show we do some mirroring, because when you are aware that you can actually have a conversation, think about that, Tommy. You have a conversation before you even open your mouth. Isn't that interesting? That's something to really take note of. And so then in the presence of children, in my quiet calm, is my body calm? Is my mouth calm? Am I smiling so I can activate smiles in them? Do they see joy so that I can dose them with joy? Am I showing laughter? Am I showing, and am I modeling what brilliance looks like? Am I
Hmm.
saying, well, let's figure this out? You have to model what brilliance looks like. They don't know until they come into the world. They need to know that, oh, there is a problem. Let's find the solution. Not like, oh, and then spend 20 minutes talking about what's not possible. No, spend 20 minutes talking about what's possible. Look at all the inventors that invented things before they were even allowed to legally go to school. Look at all the amazing, brilliant people that actually had patents before we were even able to get into colleges. Okay, so what is important to know is that we have the tremendous capacity to teach. That's what parents, I want you to know. We are born teachers. Okay. And so what we want to make certain is that we step into that and not into the stereotypical images that we don't know. We don't have. It's okay if we don't know, but what's important is to activate the curiosity in children's and their brains to want to find out.
Yes. Um, this is great. This has been a learning experience. It's been an experience that I've not had before. And I just need something. Cheri, I want to tell you something happened. I could never find the video on Facebook to share because normally when you're talking, I share this information with other people, and the video is not here. And I'm looking for it on YouTube, and I can't find it on YouTube either. This is not something I can't find it on YouTube either. I don't know what has happened. I don't know what has happened. Um,
Well, that's okay. I'm glad that I had a chance to come in
no,
and
no, but
have
we
a
don't. But the
conversation.
people, I heard it. I heard it. The people didn't hear it.
Ah,
It's showing that it's on YouTube, but I couldn't find it on YouTube either. It's not showing that it came on Facebook at all. I've been searching and searching for it and find it because I mean it is what you have said is something that we haven't dealt with. We haven't dealt with, I've been saying, you need to have, we need to sit down at the dinner table every evening and talk to our children, but not feeding the brain. And yet
yes.
it makes a lot of sense about feeding the brain that kids see. And then the biggest thing, one of the other big things you said is that you were told when you were 3 months or whatever that you
Great.
could read,
Yes, from the beginning.
that you were brilliant,
Yes.
that you were beautiful. And it wasn't idle, but it was with responsibility. It wasn't just a spoiling kind of.
Oh no, it was on purpose. It was to shore me up, to strengthen me, to have me walk sure-footed through the world, knowing that they were raising a black baby. They were raising a black child. So they shored me up. So I did not know. Like I said, I took my collard greens and my cornbread to school and and thought I had a feast. I would put my napkin out and I would be sitting there like, as if I was on a throne. And I didn't know I was bringing collard greens and cornbread because we couldn't afford the white bread that everybody else was eating their sandwiches on.
Mm. And yet, I read a book a long time ago about a girl who had biscuits um, and syrup is what she took to school, and she didn't see it the same way that you saw it because she hadn't been raised. She was embarrassed.
Yeah, see, that's the difference with what we speak into our children. That's a difference because just like someone who says, I don't have enough money, I can't feed my children. There are free seeds, right? Who told us that we could not garden? Who told us that we could not feed ourselves? Because we were brought here because we were agriculturalists. We built a whole country of food and agricultural and irrigation ways and all of that. Who told us we couldn't feed ourselves? In the South, where my family is, they're still there. They never went to the grocery store. And they are talking about joyous that they never went to the grocery store. They maybe went once every 6 months to get some little flour or something like that. They never did because they grew everything and they would exchange everything. And they'd make big old family gumbos where everybody would come and bring gumbo and everybody would take. And when they just loved on each other and didn't know that they didn't take in the lie that says you're not enough. Right? They didn't take in that lie. So the little girl who brought the biscuits, she didn't
Mhm.
realize that it takes tremendous skill to make those homemade biscuits.
Yeah.
It takes tremendous science to put the ingredients to get that together, to measure it and whatever. I mean, so oftentimes generations are passing on STEAM skills, and children don't know, so they don't value it and they don't
Yes.
embrace it. So they don't
That
know, no,
is,
no, 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 baby. You are brilliant. You are STEAM. Not, I'm going to learn STEAM. You are STEAM. You're STEAM from way back. You're STEAM from the kingdoms before we came over here. And guess what? When we got here, you still STEAM because people were still inventing, even in bondage. We're still inventing and still creating and still making amazing contributions to the world. So that I think is important. That I think, and that to me, because I see all of those folks back then as neuroscientists. I feel like they're the first neuroscientists, with or without their degrees. And so that's why neuroscience is so important to me and why I think our communities need to know about it and leverage it.
and you talked about you're created in the image of the divine,
Mm.
and I know that when I taught children's church, I told children that you're created in the image of God, and so that means that you are beautiful the way you are. And the one thing that I am doing now is really encouraging adults as well as children to not to compare themselves to someone else. That you are who you are and you're okay. And you can't be somebody else. I can't be you.
Yes. And you know what? We don't want them to be, and they don't want to be, because the thing about it is that when we are our authentic selves, we are like iron sharpening iron. When we step into our wholeness and we are our authentic selves, then what we bring to the world strengthens everybody around us as well. So it's to our advantage when we help children to be their best selves, when we say, stand in your own power, stand in grace, stand in your own power, because when you stand in your power, you make me powerful too, because then I have a right to stand in mine, right? We're not all in each other's space. I'm on my own space, right? You're in your own space. And so
But
that's,
how do you teach people not to be jealous?
oh,
Because when you know, a lot of times when you stand in your power, you started doing feeling who you are and you understand what the goals are, you begin to implement the goals, and then someone gets fearful, well, they're after my job or whatever. How do you manage that?
well, one of the things is that, and I'm going to talk about, how I feel, spiritually, is that when we are jealous, and that's a human, feeling, you can sit there for a moment and go, wait a minute, what am I thinking here? It means that we don't think God, divine, power, almighty, however you want to describe, does not have enough for all of us. That the universe is as
Mm,
big as my fingernail, right? That's what we're saying. We're saying everything, that there's only this much love to go around. There's not enough, right? It comes from
mm,
the feelings of uh, self-starvation, that I don't have enough. I don't have enough love. I don't have. But that's why I said, giving ourselves, dosing those soul kisses every single day fills us up with love enough that we can share. And so then I can celebrate you. I can say, Tommy, you did what? Oh, girl, that's amazing. Oh, lady, Miss Tommy, you are amazing. You did what? We need to call everybody up and tell. I can celebrate you because I know there's enough for me too, right?
yes, thank you. Um, the intentional was very important to me, of understanding how you use the intentional. Um, I hope that people really understand that it's important to talk to our children,
Oh, face to
to find
face.
out what's going on in their heads.
Yes. And face to face, not to the back of their heads. I mean, there's a
Mm,
conversation you might, and that's important because when we talk face to face, the oxytocin is activated. And that's a really important, that's a bonding, um, you know, that comes into our body. It's kind of a bonding hormone that comes into our body. We want to activate the oxytocin, the sense of safety, the sense of security, that relational kind of thing, health. And that happens face to face, eye to eye, looking at one another. So the thing about neuroscience is it says that I'm nurturing your whole being. I'm nurturing what I see and what I don't see. what we call it at points of access is, if it's out in the world, and we call it beneath the skin prevention and intervention. Beneath the skin, it's beneath what I see, what I'm beholding, to be aware that I am shaping that internal organs that I don't see.
Now, if someone was to come to points of access, is there a fee for it, or how does one get help?
We do a couple of things. Okay, so we have some programs that we do that, even international programs. We call one of them is called Leveraging Love and Neuroscience. I think you saw that little flyer. Leveraging Love and Neuroscience to create love spaces. That's international. It's online. It's virtual. We do it. It doesn't cost anything. There's some events that we do, for community, that doesn't cost anything. And then when we're working with agencies and school districts or doing capacity building, then you know, we keep the lights on by paying our bills, and so
Yeah.
we have some fees and that type of
Are
thing.
you working with Sacramento City Unified School District at all?
No, but certainly would love to think about that. That's where um, I should probably reach out to them. Since everyone was kind of locked, and we're just now beginning to go to school, to the schools. But I think that that's really important, because we certainly have a large percentage of our children, our babies, in Sacramento school, and I think they can definitely benefit from understanding how to engage with our children. The teachers need to know how to engage with our children in a way that they are nurturing them, creating strong, healthy brains
I'm
for our
going to
children.
introduce you to Dr. Mariana Harris, who
Ah,
is at UC Merced.
wonderful.
And she should, if she likes what you're saying, she should be able to bring you on to do something with the students the African American students who are coming from other places to the university for the first time.
Oh, that would be wonderful. I taught some university classes in the past, and I had the babies, the freshmen, right? I mean, I had the other ones, but the
Yeah.
freshmen are the ones that like you said, coming to the university. And so it is so important, because often the universities say, oh, well, they're grown. They shouldn't be able to navigate the world. But on the contrary, because if you understand a child development and adolescent development, the prefrontal cortex is not fully developed until they're like in their early 20s. So they still need intentional help in developing that part of their brain to get organized and to stay calm, and to develop a sense of self-worth and all these things. And that needs to be culturally based, because by the time you get into college, you hunger for that. You hunger for the rhythm that makes you feel at home. You hunger for
Mhm.
the way people move through the world and the way they talk to you. When my son went to it was so he went to on a trip to the HBCUs, and when he came back, I said, "Oh." He ended up graduating from HBCUs. He said, "Oh," I said, "How did you enjoy it?" We went to this college and this college and this college and this college. And he said, my favorite one was, I forgot which one it was. It was somewhere in the South. And he said, my favorite one was, I don't know if it was Bethune-Cookman. It was one of the smaller ones. And I said, really?
Mm.
Because he didn't have the major he was interested in. I said, tell me why. Why was that your favorite one? And when he started to describe it, what it was, well, he had gone into the lunchroom, and when he got in front of those mamas, okay, those black mamas, they said, "Oh no, baby, you need to come back and put some more on your plate, because you're a big, strong young man, and you need to go make sure that we take care of you. We need to." And he loved the way they loved on him, right? He felt at home. He said, "This is my school." He went to Howard though, and they loved on him over there because they have door moms. But and so that makes a difference, and that's what's absent. That is what's absent. When I had students in my class, we got into the rhythm of life, and so they learned faster. They internalized their value. They really took ownership because they were given the tools and strategy. And I have my training, of course, is in, mental health and child development and adolescent development and education. So that those three marry very well together.
The other thing is that Dr. Harris also knows someone in the Sacramento City Unified School District. I don't know anyone that would that I can call that would get you in, but she does. She and her husband both are very active in Sacramento. He's an attorney, but they do great things.
I think
And
that's wonderful. And you know what? Like I said, this information that I'm sharing with you, I mean, I think it's okay that we couldn't get it on, but I think our families would have benefited greatly by knowing that they have what they need already. They just need to know how to cultivate it and strengthen it, because there's so many deficit oriented programs that bring our families in. There's a lot of parenting programs that are not culturally responsive, and our parents leave feeling that they're not strengthened or that they're not enough, and then they message that to their children without being aware of it by just how they move through the world. So knowing you are more than enough, and here's why, and this is the skills that you want to cultivate in you because they were poured into you years ago, and you can do this, and you can pour it into yourself. And so these adults that you're talking about, these young adults who are just getting to college for the first time, oh my goodness, I would love to work with them, because that is the reason why it makes a difference with them leaning in and going across the finish line or stopping their toes at the front door.
mm, I am really excited about it, and I think that if you're excited about the 4 year, as you know, you may not. And Merced is the newest university
Yes,
in
yes,
the UC system, um, and they know the new superintendent in Sac City, and they can help get this in if they like the idea, if they buy into it. I
yes.
bought into it, and I hope that they would buy into it as well. And even if they don't, it's still something that every school district.
Should know. Here's the thing, Tommy, which is so important, is that we're talking about shaping the brain
Yeah.
for limitless possibilities. I mean, literally shaping the brain for limitless possibilities. And if you know that the brain can be shaped for limitless possibilities, then you know that can be undermined as well, because the neuroplasticity doesn't know, it won't make a difference whether or not you're working with it or you're letting it sit dormant and having it be pruned away, right? It'll do whatever to adjust with the input that's coming in. So that means that, like I said, that word that I keep using about intentional, that means that we have to intentionally shape these beautiful brains so our children can, go on and lead this world and step into their power and
Uh,
be the best that they can.
I'm going to talk to. I would. I'm going to look and make sure I can find this on YouTube. I see that it's being taped on YouTube, because I think that churches should hear this as well. Because you
Yes.
see, the way we teach it in church, we teach it differently, but it's the same thing.
Absolutely. There's no question about it, because we're really talking about taking a holistic perspective. Our children are not pizza slices, right? And so when they're out there, it's like, okay, look, I'm going to work with this part of the brain, or I'm going to work with this part of the body. I'm just going to teach them how to read without recognizing that all those other things, they're not going to learn to read without the other pieces being nurtured at the same time. No more than if I hold my breath and expect the rest of my body to breathe for me, am I going to be able to do that? And so we need to have a holistic perspective of our children, a holistic perspective of ourselves, and recognize then that we are not broken. See, the image of saying that we are broken doesn't sit, it doesn't align with our philosophy at points of access, because we are whole and complete. And when we know that, we step into our fullness. When we know that, we'll do like me and not know that I can't read. No one told me that, right? No one told my children they couldn't read, so they just read. And that teacher, the stunned look on her face, and I have to tell you this, I mean, she was stunned, and she had me read my paper, and I was shaking in my boots because I had to get home, because after school, you better get home. You have to get on time, go do your homework and do your chores, and then you can go play outside. But so she kept me after, and she wanted this other teacher to come and witness this. Okay, so she said, did you do this? Did you read it?" And I thought, my little voice going, "Yes." I'm thinking, what does this mean by saying yes? And then so I had to read it again, and this was when children were writing. She was writing on the board, and people had to copy it. All that she wanted them to be able to do was say, "Feel better," and so children were trying to copy "feel better" and then write their name on the end of it. And Cheri didn't know we weren't supposed to be doing that because this was my friend. So I looked down on my paper and I was like, "Oh." Opened my desk, got some more papers, flipped it over. I was writing the story because I wanted my friend to know, "I'm so sorry you got hurt when you fell on the playground, and I'm so glad the ambulance came to get you." And I was just writing a novel, right? I was writing everything. I didn't know that I was supposed to be writing because I was so caught up in getting my letter done. And so then everyone's letter went into the little folder. Mine didn't. I was thinking, why didn't mine go in there? So all the children left. "Cheri, can you stay after, please?" And I'm thinking, I never got in trouble. So why did I have to stay after? So yes, I was taught to be very polite and "Yes, ma'am." And I stayed after. She called another teacher in and she said, "This is the little girl I've been telling you about." And my mind went really quick, like, okay. So I put my things away. My crayons are in my desk. I was just going all over things. I did everything right here. And she handed her my paper. And the teacher looked at me, she looked at me, she goes, "Who wrote this?" And I said, "Me." I was like, I don't know who this teacher is, but me. And she goes, and then she said, "Prove it." In other words, like, read it. So I read it. And they were astonished because they
But
didn't
she should have known that you wrote it because you wrote it in class.
know. Exactly. That's exactly it. And so that's the expectation. And here's the thing to circle back around. So my daughter went to school and she could read and write. And so she went to school and in kindergarten. She had been reading for quite some time. She had writing her own stories for quite some time. And the teacher didn't believe that she could. So one day, without letting me know, they called her into the principal's office and they gave her a stack of books taller than her. She goes, "Mommy, they were taller than me," because they wanted to see, was she just memorizing and she had memorized
Ah,
books, or could she actually read? "Okay, read this book and read this book." And I go, "Did you read them all?" She goes, "Yes." And I was so tired. And they said, after I finished all the books, she said, I said, "Well, what did the principal say?" Because, I was thinking, this sounds like a mom visit. I was like, suddenly I was like, "What are you doing taking my child?" I think I need to have a conversation. And I did have a conversation, but they said, "We were just so astonished. The teacher said, you said you could read. She could read when you filled out the form." And so she would go through the books and then put them away and get another one and go through the books. And the teacher said, she's really got to, if she's going to learn to read, she's not following along the little stick that I point to the words. She kind of, because she had read the whole line, right? She's like,
yeah.
she's not following along. So I'm a little bit concerned that she's not able to do that. She can't track. I said, "She can track, all right." She's just bored. And so I went and they were just astonished that. But that's the low expectations for Black children, right? And so
Mhm.
it's important to have high expectations for mamas and papas to come in there with high expectations to fill their babies up first, and for all of us to wrap around them with the possibility. The village needs to hold them up and say, "You can do this." And so I started studying neuroscience even before I went to college, university to study neuroscience. And because I was curious always about how the brain works. So when my children were little, I was like, "Oh, neuroplasticity, huh? Well, then let's read some stories." So that's, and I had a model for it from my grandmother, right? Even before. So I say all those folks before,
Mhm.
brilliant. All of the people that came before us, they were the neuroscientists. They were the brilliant. We just need to remember that. And so I get excited. I can't wait. I want to tell every single one of our parents, every single one of our children, how brilliant they are, how, and how they can access that brilliance.
One time I worked with a young man. He was a boy. He was in kindergarten, and we learned words. He didn't. His parents. He watched movies with his dad. He watched scary movies because he would come in. He said, "Miss Tommy, we watched a scary movie with my dad," and they didn't. They didn't really do the reading thing. But anyway, he learned to read. And I
Mhm.
said, "Oh my God, you can read." He said, Miss, tell me I can read. I said, yeah, well, I pointed to this, I pointed to that. And then I would have him write a sentence. And I said, and you wrote the sentence, so you can read. He said, I can, Miss, tell me I can read. I said, yes, you can read. He
So
was so
wonderful.
excited that he could read. And it was just simple things. And I
Yes,
didn't know about if only I had known about neuroscience of nourishing the brain
nourish the
into
brain, nourish the brain. You
in
know,
those terms.
it's interesting that um, we don't spend a lot of time helping our families to know how to nurture the wholeness of themselves. And so, really the parenting programs that we have fall short. There's some really great ones, but they still fall short because they were developed before neuroscience, before we got a foothold on neuroscience, right? And so we talk about um, building capacities because that's makes sure that the assumption that the capacity already exists, not pouring something into an empty vessel, but putting that vessel into the light and seeing how full it is already, and then saying, oh, and that's how the brain works. What do you already know? Take what you already know, connect it to your previous knowledge. That activated part allows for us to more easily move information from short-term memory to long-term memory. In other words, we can get a foothold on the science. We can get a foothold on math. And the interesting thing is this: my mom and my grandmother, um, and this is a perfect example of us teaching from early age, even without a formal education. My mom had this huge, gigantic. She was a seamstress. She could sew, and my grandmother can sew. And so I wore a lot of home, made clothes, and they were fabulous. They were beautiful. I was like, where'd you get that? And I was, doesn't everybody's mom make clothes? I just thought that that's the way the world was. But she had this huge button jar. And every time she was sewing, she'd say, Cheri, can you come over here for a minute, sweetie baby? Baby girl, can you organize those buttons? Can you pour them all out? And can you get me put the yellow ones together and the red ones together and can you put the purple ones together? And then when you do that, she'd look over there and she'd say, yes, can now you put the small ones, and then you could, and she'd have me organizing these buttons. And then and she'd look at them and go, wow, you really ordered. Yes. And then she'd take one button out of it, just to show that, good, that I found the button I was looking for. And it took me so long to realize she was never looking for a button. And because we put all those buttons back in there, and I think, and then I do it all again. I do it all again the next time. But what she was doing was organizing my brain. She was laying down foundations for mathematics. And my aunt would do it with clothespins and
Mm.
organizing them, and how big this is going to be, this wide, how many clothespins do you need to hang this sheet, how many clothespins do you need to, and she would deliver. She had a washer and dryer, but she would say whenever we went to visit her, she was like, oh, I need this hung. Oh, she knew we were coming. And I think, did her dryer break every time we visited? But she was really instilling in us the mathematics about how to measure and how and to count and those types of things.
And a lot of parents, when we had those had to hang clothes on the line, they didn't know about stimulating the
Yeah,
brain.
yes.
We just went and we hung them up without thinking about how many clothespins you would
Yes.
need.
And
Uh,
how long it was and which one's shorter and how many, if you took this towel and you put it on top of that sheet, you would need 8 of these. If you put it on top of the other one, you'd only need 2. And what's the difference? And all those types of things are conversations. Um,
mhm.
the UN says, and my grandmother said this really well, but all of these things about I need 1,000 books in my house in order to teach my child to read. And so parents think that their children will never learn to read because they don't have a lot of books, and that the word gap and all of those different things. But you know what? We're storytellers. I learned to read from listening to my grandmother tell me a story, and she had one book, and it shows historically that we were hiding out when it was illegal for us to learn to read, and using flashlights in the bottom, using the Bible to learn to read, using things, and everybody would teach one another. So this deficit thinking that I need what I don't have, we need to flip that and say, no, what do you already have? Because when I taught a class with students who were wanting to be teachers, one of the things that we did was I said, okay, we have all this technology that everyone wants to donate to us. So I want you to create lessons. Tell me your age group and developmentally appropriate, culturally responsive, all these things. I want you to create a lesson and you just get the bells and whistles and use all the technology you can possibly use and wow us and teach us. And so they did, of course, start with the technology first. We had, almost 3D things. We were just amazed and wowed. And then I said, okay, now I want you to teach that same lesson and I want you to use this one book, choose whatever book you want. And I want you to use what the community, we're going to pretend the community donated these things. So they had a bunch of little, paper towel holders and a bunch of just, things that normally we would say, well, what do you do with this? And there immediately was a panic. You can't teach anyone this. You can't possibly teach anyone with just this. And so I modeled it for them. And they were astonished because they didn't, that feeding into the idea that I need so many tools in order to teach. And so they took the papers, they crumpled up papers, they created wonderful sculptures of the earth to show to teach about the stars. They created amazing things to teach children the same topic. Now there was some, grown up tantruming for a minute there. They're like, "Are you kidding? I can't believe you're asking us to do the impossible." I said, "If you don't believe this is possible, then please don't ever step foot in a classroom because children need to know that you can teach them no matter what, because it's not that they're empty vessels. They came into the world as scientists. What you want to do is make knowledge accessible to them." And they were like, "Oh," so then I was amazed at what they could do. Why? Because I refused to accept the limitations that they could put on themselves. And so therefore I like to tell parents,
And
you know,
you were modeling what they need to do in the
yeah,
classroom. They don't accept limitations.
yes, not to accept, exactly, not to accept limitations. And so modeling for them, and then they took it off and they realized, so no matter what district you're put in, then I said, then you can teach the babies. Because it doesn't matter that was last year's book, like, oh, I would be able to teach them, but our books are 4 years old. Well, guess what? 4 years old? Well, I think 10 years ago, 4 plus 4 still was 8. And, ABC still, D still followed. I mean, it hasn't changed that much. It doesn't matter if the book is older. Um, do something amazing, creative, and exciting for the babies.
I would love to see you be a person for in-service training for all teachers to when we go into the classroom of how we accept the children.
Oh my goodness. Accepting the children with joy. I mean, just recognizing that, that's the one thing I told the teachers is that the first time that these babies lay eyes on you, remember you are their mirror. You are their mirror. Reflect back to them their beauty, strength, and capacities. They should see on your face how you look at them, that they are amazing. My grandmother looked at me like I was on a throne. I mean, I would be walking like, oh, like I was so smart, and not like the spoiled brat, but like, oh my goodness, I can do anything. I can do anything. So that's how it imagine how children, what they can do if they didn't know there were limitations, if there were none. Well, I'm excited. This was I'm glad that I had a chance to talk with you and share what obviously I'm so passionate about, because I feel like it's the missing piece. What closes the gap. It's what allows us to tell the truth about our own capacities and capabilities. It allows us to create continuity across generations by that thread of brilliance, by that thread of love. And when we tap into that, then we can take care of ourselves. My grandmother was like the neighborhood care person. She took care of folks. Why? Because they come into her presence and she just speak blessings over them. She'd always say to me, you know what? And I tell my children that, no, stop. Speak blessings first. Before, your body should image that. And then as soon as you start speaking to your babies, speak blessings first. Bless them. Bless them. And then they walk away going, oh, I I can do anything. And so then when you get a teacher who says they can't do it, like I let me tell you this one last story. My youngest son went to school. He could learn to read. He read at 2 years old. So of course, by then, and that's unusual, I must say. Um, However, so when he was in class, the teacher would not give him a turn. I was in there observing one day, and I should say that I tell parents, go to school with your babies at least once a year. So every year with each one of my children, I would go to school for the whole day with my backpack, with my jeans, with my tennis shoes so my feet didn't hurt, and I would spend the whole day in classroom as a student so that I could partner better with the teachers and know how my child was navigating the world. They would be so excited. But I went to school with them every year. Anyway, so my son is in there, and the teacher's not giving him a turn, and so um, because she assumed he probably didn't know. One of those instances where he could read, but she assumed he couldn't because he could zip through the words so quickly, and by then he was 5 years old, and so he said, "Excuse me," like, "Excuse me, Miss Adams," and she said, "Yes," like that look, and she said, "I know you're so busy, and it's probably very difficult for you to see where you are from where you are. Maybe I'm sitting too far away because I had my hand up for a while, and you chose Joey and Sarah on side of me, and you didn't see me. Would you like me to stand so you can see me better?"
Oh,
She
how
was,
diplomatic.
and how it gave the teacher pause because he noticed and he could articulate it that he didn't say, "Oh, the teacher's picking on me," or "The teacher's not nice." He said, "Clearly, let me stand up and that'll make it easier for you to call on me because you'll be able to see me better."
What was her response?
She was literally, she went, "Oh, oh, oh my goodness. Oh, oh, I'm so sorry. Did you have something to say? Oh, yes. What would you?" She was fumbling. She said, "Yes, I." And so he said, "May I stand, please?" And so she said, "Well, yes." And so he stood, and he said, "Now the question you asked was," and yeah, repeated her question, and he said, "And I do know the answer." And so then he gave her the answer, and then he sat back down. And she called me after that, and she said, "You know what? Your child taught me so much about what kind of teacher I am." She said, I realized that I was teaching the way I was taught." It showed her own bias. And so she said, "I didn't realize that." But he was so calm and so gracious and stood up. He set me straight. He said, "I realized that, oh, why?" And I had to ask myself, why did I keep passing over him? Or he's the only black child in the class, maybe.
And she really didn't see him,
She
and
really
she
did.
didn't think he had
Exactly.
the answer.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, I have enjoyed this conversation. I it is so important, especially now during COVID, that we tap into our assets, that we tap into our strengths, because the story and the conversations out there that we hear about what's happening to Black families is never through a strength based lens to begin with. And so, certainly now it isn't. And so, people can take that in. We can feed ourselves nurturing food that nurtures our minds and bodies, or we can have that force fed on us that's negative and that is not healthy. And it's not healthy for our brains and bodies. We know that because we see the depression rates go up, we see the suicide rates go up. See all this because it is toxic to our brains and bodies. Our brains want to have an authentic experience that want to align with our truth. And our truth says we're excellent. Our truth says we're capable. And our truth says that we're all these wonderful things. And so we try to align with that. And when we're misaligned, then it can cause us to have struggles. And and we need to help one another align with that. To speak blessings to one another. How you doing? You are amazing. How you doing? How's your day going? You are so brilliant. I just want you to know that you made my day with a smile on your face, and to smile back so we can activate their mirror neurons, even if they're not smiling. To smile at them because it'll activate their mirror neurons, and they realize that I'm smiling, and I don't know where that joy is coming from. It's because somebody walked in the room and blessed me with their their love and their presence by saying, "You are worthy," by how they looked at me, right?
I'm going to practice this, and I will get back to you. Now, if people want to, the everyday families don't necessarily have access to you. It is the school system that has, and of course, we can go online to pointsofaccess.com.
Yes,
Is
and
it
we're going,
.org?
yes, .org,
.org.
pointsofaccess, .org. We're actually going to be, uh, we're going to make some of the programs that are available to our families so they can take advantage of the storytelling sessions and the storytelling with intention, building on the assets of African American families. How do you tell a story so that you're nurturing the neural pathways of one another's brains? And how do you calm one another's stress responses? How do you partner with your mirror neurons in your brain so that you can do some self nurturing and some self healing? So there are some things that we can benefit from understanding and integrate it into our lives immediately, immediately. And so we will definitely be doing that when we have two other websites that we're going to be launching. One is specifically the CAT model of engagement. The other one is our Love Space Institute. We've developed Love Space Institute, and that is where we hang our hat for research and how we integrate research into our work. So we'll be letting folks know about those resources because we recognize, especially now, we want to make resources and information available in bite-sized pieces so it's easy to digest and take in and understand. And hopefully I've been able to present this in a way that makes it accessible. Certainly it sounds like in our conversation that it's accessible.
Well, I have learned a lot, and I'm going to have to listen to it several other times to really get it. I like the idea of how of the brain. We say it in church, and this is it just goes back to what we're taught in church, but it's said differently, but it's the same thing. And we don't talk about nourishing the brain. And the key to me is learning to nourish the brain and to make sure that I'm modeling the behavior that I want children to I want them to be, so that
Yes,
they see
exactly.
that it's coming to me. Uh,
And to engage with one another as adults because they're watching how we engage with one another, to
mhm.
engage with other adults as if we're speaking to fellow kings and queens. And that's really the type of honor and respect that we should have for one another when we greet one another, that we greet one another as though I am speaking to another queen or fellow queen, or I'm speaking to a fellow, who's a king. And that's how we greet one another. The historical words that were used in negative terms, that the original way it was kind of changed. It was a word that was an African word that actually meant fellow fellow king or fellow queen. It meant, and then it was changed and distorted and changed and that type of thing. So what I really think, and this is certainly what I told my children, anyone that I engage with, so now take the truth back, what we really are saying when we greet one another, and so use the actual words is hello, queen, hello, king. So that when I look at you and that nod that we give one another, that nod means you are worthy. You are worthy. I see you, and you're more than enough because you're interconnected to me. And here's the thing that's really important. Think about this. If we take two things, love and joy, and the science shows what it does to our brains and bodies, then we don't have a deficit of anything because it doesn't cost us anything. So that it levels the playing field because it doesn't matter whether you make 20 $1,000 a year, $5,000 a year, $200,000 a year, because that levels the playing wheel. If I know how to leverage the love that I have for my babies to strengthen their brains and bodies, how the love that I have for myself to strengthen my brain and body and keep me centered, the love that I have for my community, then I then have the capacity to build my children's future with them, co-construct it with them,
Hmm.
so they can have whatever they can have that education, they can have that job, they can have, or I can too. But to not feel that if I don't have the same amount of money in my pocket that someone else has in their pocket, that I have less. No, 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 no. I need to see myself as whole so that I can stand in grace, stand in my power, and navigate the world joyfully.
What
And
do you mean by co-construction?
co-construct is what we talk about when we talk about developing relationships. That I can't develop a relationship with someone else all by myself, right? I cannot. I It's what they bring to it and what I bring to it. So we are co-constructing right now our engagement and how we engage. The fact that I'm, you know, this tone that I'm using, the body language that I'm using, it speaks to you unconsciously. It speaks to you in a way that allows you to be calm and engaging as well. My voice is not loud. It's not, my body language is not, aggressive. And so when I speak to you in this way, then your mirror neurons are activated. And then you're able to come into this space and engage with me in a way that you co-construct. You bring something to this as well. And so we get into this way that we are both creating and co-constructing our engagement together. If I came in and I didn't realize that, then we could be out of balance because I might bring this type of energy to the conversation. Not me, because I try not to do that. But I mean, someone who came in from a tough day might come in and bring an experience to the engagement or to the interaction that would activate someone else's stress response system, and then they activate mine, because now they're upset, and then I get more upset because I've been working all day and I'm tired, and you're upset, and anyway, so we created this uncomfortable engagement because we co-constructed together. We don't do it in isolation. And so with children, we want to make certain that we intentionally co-construct or nurture them in a way that their body and their engagement will show that, will kind of show us that I am reflecting back to them calm. I am reflecting back to them capacity, showing them what they can do and modeling for them. And I am breathing, because guess what? If if I start breathing really slowly and I made it really obvious, then you would start breathing really slowly. Have you ever noticed that? I mean, your mirror neurons would get activated. If I started
Hmm.
leaning in to you and talk to you, then you would lean in and a little closer. I started smiling. You walked into a room and there's in, incredible laughter going on. People are having a wonderful time, and you walk in and you just tickled. You don't know what you're laughing about. You start smiling. You might even start laughing too. You don't know why, but you're like, I didn't even hear the joke. I don't know what anyone was laughing about, but this is a joyous time, and you're engaged in that. It's your brain that's already engaging with them even before you open your mouth. It's your brain that's already had a human experience with the people that you're engaging with before you even begin to talk. And that's important as we're supporting children, because imagine how many times they're in our presence before we open our mouths.
I have one final question for you. In working with children, I come in and I'm not I'm a loud person, so I'm not I'm not a quiet person. But if I was quiet and I'm with children who have been abused, they've
Mm,
been told you're nobody.
mm.
How do you grapple with that? Because they don't know how to take
Their
the
stress
space
responses.
that you're opening up to them.
Yes. And here's the thing. First of all, I'm going to circle back to you said I come into a room when, and I'm loud. And oftentimes our children are so loud. I'm going to change that word and use exuberant instead, because exuberance shows a passion for living. It shows joy that's been internalized. It shows pulling that from the past. Somebody who knows they're more than enough. And so we are exuberant. So we will come in tapping our toes, and and that needs to be celebrated, to be exuberant and tapped into it, and then create spaces for that. And then we show them that, okay, we can be excited and exuberant and create a time to do that. And then there's a time not to do that, where we allow our bodies to calm and we allow our energy to rejuvenate, and we allow our, okay, so I want to say that first. And then to go to your question about what do we do when children come in and they've been told all of, for a long period of time that they are not worthy. First of all, we want to make certain that with all children that we protect their sense of well-being by being respectful to their boundaries, and that children, and that's really important, because that means that when grandma and auntie and uncle Fred and whoever else comes to visit and whatever, and the tendency to want to be respectful is to go and give, so and so a hug and go, they need to have permission and give permission. And then we need to protect those permissions if they're not feeling it, right? If they don't want to give, you know, whoever a hug, it's okay, because there are different ways of showing love. They can say something really kind to them. We can give them the words to say, if you want to say something to, this teacher or whomever it is, because you really, really care about them, but you don't want them to touch you because you need those safe boundaries, then here's some words you can use. I really missed you. I couldn't wait for you to come back to school. So adults can say that too, because then we're activating, we're creating an opportunity for them to feel safe, but they're reading us and seeing that they do care about us. So, I couldn't wait for you to get back here, Keisha. When you were gone, we made some really big pictures, and I saved one for you, and now you can make yours, and we'll put it up there on the wall too. And I just want you to know that we saved a place for you in line. And so now, and they're looking at your body language. They're looking at all those different things. So then I create a sense of trust and a sense of safety, because I'm not crossing their boundaries. I'm not crossing their sense of safety. And that would be different for every child, what that sense of safety is. And so now they're going to trust what I'm saying. And I can say to them, and they can hear me say it, not just to them, but to the child next to them, so that they know I'm not just saying it, that it actually has meaning. Okay. That I say, "Ooh, Keisha, you are so brilliant. I saw the way, you know what? I really," and to not just say you're brilliant, but to say why. Because I noticed that when you were drawing that picture, that you took the time to draw each leaf individually, and then the flower came out the top. And so it looks like, tell me a little bit more about it. Keisha might say, well, so that it could reach the sun. And what kind of flower is it? What's a sunflower? Oh, tell me more. And then that gives me a chance to say, oh, you know what? Let's look it up. Let's find out a little bit more about the sunflowers, because now I've tapped into what's interesting to her. And we can learn about, the seeds, and you can eat the sunflowers. I can bring some to share. This is what it looks like when we take them out of the shell. This is what it looks like when we plant them. I've hooked her into science now. So now we can plant some in the garden. We can see what happens, the life cycle, and the birds that eat the seeds. I've hooked her in. And now she can begin to see her own value, her own worth, her own. I don't own that. One of the things I like to teach us to understand is to be intentional, there's my word, about transferring ownership of knowledge, not keeping it in my desk, transferring ownership of knowledge. So in that way that I described, now Keisha owns that knowledge. I don't. She can take it home with her, because now she can go look it up and go think about it and whatever. And so she has I begin to cultivate a new internal working model, or a new way of seeing herself and seeing her own value, and helping her to build that inside, internalize that inside, so that the neural pathways that support that new internalized model are strong enough to shake it off when someone says, you didn't do that right. oh, well, you know what? I wasn't trying to do that. What I really was trying to do was this. And so I did it. But that's something I might try next time. Let me think about that. That's something I'm going to go home and ponder. And then I'm going to get out my science book and figure out how I can do that instead next time, as opposed to feeling smaller. So I hope I answered your question. It's really
You
about,
did, you did. I just got to go practice it and then come back and talk to you about whether I did it correctly. And I was concerned, and I thank you for exuberance because I am an exuberant. As you can tell, your voice is softer than mine, and I haven't learned to be to talk in those terms like this when I'm doing things. I talk like this most of the time.
oh, and here's the thing I want to share with you, because this, I don't, I mean, I use a different tone of voice in different spaces. And so the stronger voices that are down, in our stump, in our tummy, that vibration, that's important for children to also hear that, to hear that, because it could resonate with them that says, especially the low vibrational tones, that uh, you are safe. They could help them to recognize that this calming way that I'm speaking, there are other calm ways, and I can have a stronger voice. I'm not using it right now, but but I'm trying to be intentional about, you know, how I'm engaging depending on the circumstances. And given that you asked me about children, I'm really trying to give you an idea of, how to not activate stress responses within parents, to not activate stress responses within parents by making them feel, unworthy. And that's something that we just cannot do. We as a country must not do. It's like, if you make parents feel unworthy, then you removed all the assets that you're asking them to use to take care of their child. We need to show them that they're worthy, show them how to build in what they already have and then add to it, as opposed to having them come into our presence and we say, you know, here's an empty vessel. Let me start filling it with things that are foreign to you, as opposed to saying, here's what you already have. And here's some things that we can add to it that align with who you are, so that it'll be like this wonderful garden of collard greens. It'll be this wonderful way of of building on what you already have, and that way they're confident in pouring it to their children faster, because it's not foreign to them. We give them things and it's so foreign, they're trying to figure out, how do I uh, okay, so they told me on page 59 I'm supposed to do this. I don't even know what that word means. How do I do that? As opposed to saying, ooh, you love your children, and here's some ways. I hear that you say, Tommy, you are magical. Ooh, what does that mean to you? I mean, Tommy, he's all that, and I want him to know. And so then I know how that I'm hearing really how the parent really wants to engage. And then I might add to that and build on that. And so then it's easier for me, instead of saying, don't do this, because you know what? I know you've seen a 2-year-old. What you tell them not to do, they're going to do. What the last thing you say not to do, they're going to do. Right? It's the way the brain works. Don't tell a parent what not to do. Tell a parent what they can do based on what they already know and build on that. Don't tell a child what they can't do. Tell them what they can do. And then the other things that are negative behaviors or whatever, they can fall away because the brain's not going to be activated to use them, right? If you're using the behaviors that are positive and you strengthen those neural pathways, that will become the default behavior, and the other ones will be pruned away. Be intentional about that.
Okay. We just have to have more talk. I
Pleasure.
just got to have more talk about this. It's exciting. Cheri Reaves, you have no idea. This is just a whole new language, uh, a new form of thinking, but it appears to be a good form of thinking, especially when we're talking about shaping the brain. And we know that parents have the influences of
Yes.
children at a very young age. And when we realize the influence that we really have in terms of the brain, in what we call children and how we talk to them, um, it can make
Yes,
a difference.
yes,
And I
from
want to say
infancy.
thank you.
Thank you. And thank you so much. I'm very excited. I think that we can leverage our best assets and do some amazing transformative work that can catapult us where we need to be, where
Uh,
babies need to be.
I am. I'm like I said before, and as I said to people that we were going to learn things tonight, and I have learned,
Well,
and
I'm
I'm
so
going to say
delighted.
thank you.
I am so delighted. I am, as I said, Cheri Reaves at Points of Access, and we work at the intersection of neuroscience and relational health and education. That is a powerful connection, and it is the foundation for transformative practice. So, thank you so much. It's been my great pleasure.
And you can go to www.pointsofaccess.org 800-9748-903. Cheri Reaves.
Yes, and feel free, please, to reach out and let us help you to build capacities to create the relationships that you want to be involved in and see your babies thrive. It is time. It's
Yes,
time.
yes. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
To the contrary, we thank you. And we really do need to have another conversation um, about this. Maybe I we will can grow some and see how it works and how we have changed in developing our brains and talking about the development of the brains of children, because you also said it's how we treat each other.
Yes,
So
how we treat each
if
other. Yes.
if we're working on the brains of each other, we can talk about that the next time I see you and talk to you. Thank you,
Thank
thank
you.
you, thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
It is indeed my pleasure. Be
That's it.
safe,
Be safe.
and I will build on what I have and look at what I have
That's so
instead.
wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye for now.
Bye for now. Blessings.